Welcome everyone to the Return to Regis Town Hall. We appreciate you joining us today. My name is Walt Horner, I'm the Dean of Students. We're in the process of vetting some folks, we're going to begin. If you're hearing from anyone that's having difficulty joining the Town Hall, they can contact the ITS Help Desk. Number is 781-768-7177. Once again, the number is 781-768-7177. So as we begin today, we're going to share a slideshow as we go through this so we can sort of track the conversation. It's important for us, though, to know that there's a couple things in play here. If you do have questions, which I'm sure many of you do, you can use the chat function at the bottom of your Zoom screen to share any questions or comments you may have for us today. But I think we're going to start up here, and it's hopefully going to be a wonderful conversation for us as we share our plan for the fall. So the schedule is pretty straightforward. We're going to talk about the plan in its origins. We'll talk a little bit about health, safety, and testing. Spend some time talking about student life in the university operations. Spend a moment talking about community expectations, the academic experience, and then we're going to wrap up with a student and family question and answer period. Once again, a reminder, everyone's been muted. And if you do have questions, please use the Zoom chat function for any questions that you may have. We're joined today by some fantastic folks, some familiar faces for some of you. President Hayes is joining us today. Carol Kolomitz, who's our Chief Operating Officer. Audrey Grace, our Chief Diversity Officer. And Dr. Mary Driscoll, our VP of Academic Affairs. And then Diana Jones, our Medical Director, is here as well. We've already received a number of questions from students in the Student Government Association. So when we do start our question and answer period, please know we're going to cover those questions first, and then we'll get to your questions as soon as we can. And for those that are unable to attend today, we're recording this town hall and it will be shared to the Regis community at a later date, probably next week. One of the things that I think we're going to focus on to begin with is the importance of our student voice and involvement. So to begin, I'm pleased to announce and introduce Cole Anderson, our Student Government Association President, Sergine Delma, our Vice President of the SGA, and Dan Leahy, from the Center for Ministry and Service. So we're going to start with us with an opening reflection and prayer. Dan?
All right, thank you, Walt, and good evening. My name is Dan Leahy, and I work in the Center for Ministry and Service at Regis. And on behalf of our team, I welcome you all to this town hall. We're living through some strange times, uncharted waters, as we know. And our faith tradition at Regis encourages us to turn to our loving God for help, strength, and clarity during challenging times like these. Additionally, our founders, the Sisters of St. Joseph of Boston, began as a small religious community dedicated to loving and serving the dear neighbor without distinction, meaning the poorest, the sickest, and the most vulnerable. And it all began in France in 1650 under very difficult conditions. The after effects of war, poverty, disease, violence, even a plague, and many, many more challenges for this small fledgling community of 6 young women. So we recognize today that we stand upon an inspiring history from which we move forward in confidence and in hope for the common good of all. Tonight it is my privilege to introduce to you Sergine Delma and Cole Anderson, Vice President and President, respectively, of our Student Government Association, and they will lead us in our opening prayer. Please keep in mind that at Regis, in a spirit of openness, inclusion, and respect, when we invoke God, we call upon the God that you know or desire to know. So thank you, and I now introduce Sergine and Cole.
Thank you, Dan. My name is Sergine Delma. I'm a senior at Regis and the Vice President of Student Government Association.
Thank you, Dan. Hi, everyone. I'm Cole Anderson. I'm a senior as well, and I serve as president.
Let us pray. Loving God, we are grateful for many things in our lives. especially the opportunity for a college education, which we do not take for granted. We believe all truth and knowledge lead us to you. Thank you for our Regis community, for all of our students, graduate students, online students, staff and faculty, alumni, and benefactors. Thank you, loving God, for the leadership and hard work that went into this plan to reopen in a safe and responsible manner.
We ask your ongoing blessing upon us all, and upon Regis, so that we can be safe and continue to learn successfully during this pandemic. Help us to ensure that the spirit and charism of the Sisters of St. Joseph of Boston still shape our campus climate as we practice hospitality, inclusion, care, and respect for all. We ask that this is the presence of our loving, faithful God. Amen.
Thank you, Cole and Sergine. It is now my privilege to introduce the president of Regis College, Dr. Antoinette Hayes.
Thank you, Dan. Thank you, Sergine and Cole as well. Welcome to everyone, and thank you for taking the time to join us this evening. Much I miss seeing you on campus, and how happy I will be to welcome you back. We're in this together. We're partners. We have a great plan, but some steps we will need to figure out together. And we all know we have to be flexible because the situation is likely to change. That said, we have had an incredible team working nonstop since March, meeting every day to assess the situation and plan for reopening the campus safely. As a nurse, I am keenly aware of the seriousness of this situation. And I've worked with my team to research and understand the steps we need to take to ensure our community safety. I'm grateful to our Dean of Health Sciences, Dr. Laura Burke, who is an epidemiologist, and Dr. Diana Jones, our Medical Director of Health Services, who have worked tirelessly to advise me with the most current science. Thanks to them and so many others, we have a Return to Regis plan. I'm so grateful for the members of my leadership team, faculty, staff, working groups, and our incredibly dedicated SGA leaders who ensured that the student voice was heard throughout this process. Our plan highlights some of the physical changes you will see on campus as well, and the procedures, cleaning and monitoring COVID. We have worked hard to create a testing protocol for all community members on campus to help ensure our safety. You will hear more about that in a minute. As the plan continues to be refined and we have more specifics, please visit the Return to Regis website for additional information. And please know how much I care about each member of our community and how responsible I feel for ensuring the safety of this campus, as well as ensuring that you have continuity of your academic offerings and the support services you need throughout these uncertain times. Regis is and will continue to be a special place that values our students and dedicates every resource to your formation in and outside of the classroom. We will get through this together, and we will emerge even stronger. Thank you for being with us tonight. And now it's my pleasure to introduce you to Dr. Kara Kolomitz, our Chief Operating Officer.
Thank you, President Hayes, and thank you to the families and students who are with us today. Understanding your experience matters to us and is deeply important. And so we are eager to be able to answer the questions you may have about our Return to Regis plan. aspect of the plan, but we certainly want to highlight those pieces that are most important based on the number of questions we've received from you. Obviously, we're committed to your education in every way possible. And one of the most profound learning outcomes of the coming semester will be the way that you learn. As Dr. Hayes said, we are in it together, and we plan to walk through this experience with you and to make it as positive of an experience as possible. All of the protocols that we will describe today have been vetted for over 4 months with our medical team under the advisement of the DPH, the CDC, and of course our local epidemiologist, Dr. Burke, and under the direction, again, of Dr. Diana Jones. One of the pieces that is most important for us as a community to understand and to talk about now is preparing for the safety of each of our community members. So Dr. Jones, let's talk first about the health and safety of our campus community. The ways in which we've made some of these really important decisions, and we'll also talk to you about the activities that you know and love that make Regis what they are. They'll still be present, they'll just be modified, and they might look a little bit different. So let's begin with the public health pieces. Dr. Jones, tell us a little bit about the health and safety checklists that every community member will adhere to.
Absolutely. Hello, everyone. It's a pleasure to be here with all of you today, and we are looking forward to a healthy and safe semester together. In order to keep everyone safe on campus and to avoid a campus closure due to COVID-19 outbreak, we need your help. The following information will be provided to you in full detail as part of our training and education. But I want to give you a sense of how we will work together to ensure the health and safety of our community. First, we are going to ask that you take your temperature and monitor your symptoms every day while you're on campus. You can do this by using the free CDC COVID-19 Symptom Checker app, or you can use the Regis Community Health Services Symptom Checker that we will give you when you arrive on campus during your initial testing. We will also ask that you bring a digital thermometer to campus with you, and Health Services will also have a supply for those of you that do not have one or cannot bring one to campus. We will ask that you bring 2 to 3 reusable cloth masks or face coverings to campus with you. You will be asked to wear a mask or face covering at all times when out in the Regis community, except while you are in your dorm room. This includes when you go to the bathroom, when you walk in the hallway of your dorm, while you're in classes, and when outside and walking around campus. We will ask that you maintain a minimum 6-foot social distance from other people, as well as not gather in large groups. This will include your dorm or in any other confined location on campus. We will also ask that you refrain from having visitors in your room other than your roommate. We will also ask that you wash your hands frequently throughout the day with warm soapy water for at least 20 seconds, or use hand sanitizer with at least 60% alcohol content. I know it sounds like a lot, but I'm sure you may already be doing all of this. And so I'll turn it back to you, Dr. Kolomitz.
Okay, so just as you have preventative measures at home right now, we're working really hard to make sure that the safety of all members of the community are considered. And so as safe as you are is as safe as our community will be. So let's talk a little bit more about those preventative measures that we have outlined in our Return to Regis plan. Some of it includes the modified spaces that have been made on campus, more plexiglass. When you arrive, you'll be surprised, I'm sure, to see the amount of plexiglass, enhanced cleaning protocols, particularly mostly in the common area bathrooms, and of course, a change in some of the dining procedures and spaces. That means not as many tables in the dining hall. It means more grab and go options, not a buffet option, just to make sure that all of those common use utensils are not in play while we're all trying to stay healthy and safe. The modified spaces and the things that you might be a little bit surprised to see, because it just looks a little bit different, are the spaces in the library, certainly spread out much more, some of the common area spaces in the residence halls, but there are still, of course, comfortable areas to gather with small groups of people, just like you would do, again, in your home environment. Let's talk a little bit about some of the health services plan, Dr. Jones, and also the counseling services and how that will be handled on our campus.
Thank you, Dr. Coleman. So health services will be in full compliance with the governor's attestation to reopen. We have completed that. And also the DPH and OSHA guidelines that have been put into place. All health services staff will be screened prior to entering the clinic, and we will also be in full PPE, which is personal protective equipment, and that will be for all health visits and for testing. We will have rigorous cleaning measures that will take place throughout the course of the day. That will happen in both health services and at our testing site. For students visiting health services, we will ask that you wear a face mask or a covering, and that will be required to be worn throughout your entire visit at health services. Our staff will also, again, be wearing PPE, which may include a face mask. We will also have a face shield, goggles, and a gown. So we'll look a little bit different than we did last semester. There will be no walk-in appointments allowed. We will have you call in advance to schedule your appointments. If you're experiencing symptoms, if you're sick, you will be screened in advance by a nurse practitioner. And then what we will do is determine if you should be seen in the health center or be referred to a local urgent care or to the hospital or to your own PCP. In some cases, our providers can meet with you via telehealth visit. We encourage you to contact the Center for Health and Wellness with questions or concerns to learn more and to also schedule a visit.
All right, Dr. Jones. So you said the key word, and it's testing. I know that there are lots of questions around testing, our symptom monitoring, contact tracing, and all within the idea we will be as safe as a community if we are all safe. So let's talk a little bit about our testing protocol and what we're going to ask our students, our faculty, and our staff to be a part of in terms of testing.
Absolutely. Before I talk about testing, I just want to mention that we have free counseling available for all students. That will be made available Monday through Friday via telehealth with limited in-person visits. And just also our pharmacology will also be available in person at health services and also through telehealth if students choose to do that. And our counseling staff will also offer virtual support groups in the fall. I didn't want to forget to tell you that. Now let's talk about the testing. So as Dr. Coleman's mentioned, the health services team is currently working with a number of colleges, including MIT and Harvard, and through the Broad Institute on a comprehensive COVID-19 testing program for the college. So health services staff will provide weekly testing for approximately 1,000 students and student-facing faculty and staff per week. We will organize a schedule that will be flexible and will meet the needs of our students. Health services, so I'll talk a little bit about the test. Health services will use, and this is just fancy language, a PCR, diagnostic assay, anterior nares nasal swab.
Okay, whoa, slow down, Dr. Jones. Let's talk just about that test. What test is this?
Yes, so I want to clarify what this test is. So it sounds fancy, but this is a quick, minimally invasive test. We will not be using the nasopharyngeal test that goes up your nose all the way to the back of the throat. That is not the method that we will be using. I am happy to tell you this process is extremely simple, quick, and fast. So the way it works is the health provider will take the swab and put it just into the nares, which is the very opening of the nostril, and we'll just slide it and kind of scrape the side of the nose for 15 seconds, and then we go on to the other side. Again, it's very easy, very simple, and it is not painful.
Okay, and Dr. Jones, just to reiterate, how frequently is this occurring for our undergraduate students, faculty, and our staff that are student facing?
Yes, so we are going to be testing once a week. And what we will do is we will create a schedule, which will be to be determined. We will notify you once we have that all in place. We will have a schedule, and so you will come the same day every week. We will be flexible with time, and so we can work on that. If you miss your appointment on the day that you're supposed to be tested, excuse me, you can come at a later time that day, or you can come the following day. We want to yep.
Sure, I'm sorry. Let's just stop just a second.
Yep.
One of the conversations that we've had within our Return to Regis plan is the idea and understanding of what we're calling the Regis Bubble, and making sure that everyone on our campus has the rigorous testing protocol once a week to ensure that there is not a COVID-19 spread. So many of you have asked, and I know student government, we talked about this yesterday, you've asked around the visitor policy and visitors to campus. We're considering our campus this fall a closed campus, which means because of the investment and rigorous work we're doing around these testing protocols, we want to maintain that bubble of everyone who is within the testing protocol being the people that are on our campus. Therefore, it is true that we're asking residential students not have visitors on our campus that are not living on our campus. It's because of this rigorous testing protocol that Dr. Jones is talking about. And our goal is that we want our campus to be as safe as a circle as possible to ensure the complete semester. Dr. Jones, just want to ask you quickly about testing when you move in. How does that work? Will I be tested upon arrival?
Yes, so we will be testing all students upon arrival to campus. And during that time, we will review important information with you, and that will include a testing schedule, how to sign up for your weekly testing appointments. So all of that will take place. So when you arrive to campus, your first stop will be at the testing site where we will do your test.
All right. And so what if I am an out-of-state student?
Yes.
What kind of protocol do I need to adhere to come to campus?
So our students coming from out of state and students outside of the border states of Massachusetts will be asked to self-quarantine for 14 days. We will also ask that you present a negative test results within 5 days of arrival. And more information will come. We will continue to monitor the DPH and CDC guidelines, and we will notify our out-of-state students of any changes, and we will be on top of this and keep in touch with you about this.
Correct. Because as you know, the science is always changing. Unfortunately, there are what's called hotspots in our country right now, and depending on where our out-of students are coming from will depend on the amount of time they'll need to quarantine on our campus. Thank you, Dr. Jones. My last question for you is a very natural question. We've heard about all the public health protocols we've put in place, the modifications around space, the enhanced cleaning on campus, the modifications around dining services, but all of that is put forth to prevent the spread of COVID-19. What happens if someone on our campus is tested positive for COVID-19?
Yes. So anyone who tests COVID-19 positive or is identified as a close contact of someone who test positive for COVID-19 will be asked to leave campus and go home. We will ask you to stay home if you're COVID positive for a minimum in isolation of 10 days. If you are a direct exposure to COVID-19, we will ask you to quarantine for 14 days. That would mean staying in your room and preferably with your own bathroom for the quarantine. So again, that person that's a close contact has not yet tested positive for COVID-19. So you see the difference. Isolation is 10 days, quarantine is 14 days. And what we will do is we will work with students. We will provide quarantine and isolation on campus for students who live out of state and are unable to return home or who have immunocompromised family members. The health team at Regis College Health Services will reach out to any member of the Regis community who is COVID positive or anyone who has a close contact with someone who is COVID positive. And we will check in and we will advise you on the steps or the people that are positive or close contacts. And we will work collaboratively with the local Board of Health on all contact tracing efforts. That includes contact identification and case management. We will assist students every step of the way and guide them so they can return safely back to campus.
Thank you, Dr. Jones. So students and families, you can hear that it is highly detailed, very intricate, very complex re-entry, repopulating plan that we have worked very diligently on for the last 4 months. The pieces of the plan, as I said, are so detailed in the Return to Regis plan. I'd encourage you, if you have additional questions around the health protocol or the testing protocol that Dr. Diana Jones has just spoken about, please add them into the chat function here on your screen, or you're welcome, of course, to email the COVID-19@Regis College email. There are also some additional operational considerations that I wanted to share with you today. Of course, we've talked about visitors onto the campus. I want to talk about what that means for families and family members. Of course, we want you to come to campus and see your student. And we'll ask that you come to campus masked, that you not enter the residence hall room of your student, but that we find a common area space for you to visit your student and to catch up with them, of course. We also want to talk a little bit about move-in. Traditionally, you know, move-in is a very festive one-day blitz of 800 people moving on campus, and clearly that isn't appropriate during the pandemic. So it is a staggered, staged move-in. You will receive your assigned time to move in, and we ask that there are only 2 family members moving you in to avoid large groups of people. We are looking forward to having our first year class move in throughout the time of August 28th and 29th, again during your assigned times that you will receive. And then our returning students come back September 4th through the 7th. The Airmark dining piece that I did mention, I also want to reiterate that there will be grab and go options and not the typical large buffet lines that we've had in the past. There's also a very comprehensive plan for what is called a rapid closure, and it's something that we are prepared for if it's necessary, if there's a surge in the state of Massachusetts, if the rate of infection based on the Department of Health is a rate that they are no longer comfortable with a campus residential facility operating. The rapid closure plan will be detailed and is detailed within the document, but it does require a removal from campus within 72 hours, which is different than we did in March. In March, there was a elongated time to leave campus, and that isn't something that we're going to be able to afford this time if there is a rapid closure. So I want to bring your attention to that. I also want to reiterate to families and students, of course, Regis College is committed to your success, and we will adhere to our policy of a prorated refund for room and board based on the date of closure, if unfortunately that were to happen. I also want to speak very briefly to our students and families about athletics and our athletic program. So much of our life on campus revolves around athletics, and we hold it very dear to our hearts, which is such a big reason why we would never compromise the health and safety of our student athletes, our coaches, and our staff and our visitors. It's unlikely that we will be holding outside competitions for the fall, but we will be making an announcement within the coming days regarding our athletic program. However, the heart of our athletic program, of our strength and our conditioning, our skill building, our individualized workouts will continue in a robust way. We will be holding on August the 3rd athlete town hall. We are eager to hear from our athletes, to talk about their upcoming fall and what that will look like. So we look forward to seeing families and athletes then. Whew, we just ran through quite a bit, and I'm sure you have a lot of questions. We want to talk about life on campus and clubs and organizations, and ensure that all of those pieces of your collegiate life that bring you the joy of being at Regis will absolutely still be there. They just might look a little bit different. Your dance company rehearsals might be staggered a little bit more, you might be spread out a little bit more, and you might be wearing masks, but you're still going to have your dance company rehearsal. That's just an example. And of course, we look forward to seeing all of you on our campus. I'd like to introduce to you our fabulous SGA leaders, our Dean of Students, Walt Horner, and our Associate Vice President for Equity and Inclusion, Audrey Grace. Cole, Sergine, Walt, and Audrey.
Hello, everyone. Sorry, a little bit of a mic difficulty, but as members of the Regis community, we are called to love, serve, and respect each other without distinction, and to serve the common good. In the spirit of our founders, the Sisters of St. Joseph of Boston, and our commitment to care for others, our community is working together to create a safe on-campus and residential housing living experience.
Earlier this summer, we sent out the needs assessment survey to the Regis community in regards to impacts and limitations that the COVID-19 may be having during their readjustment to the student life at Regis as we enter the fall semester 2020. With such resources, it is crucially important that each student finds the time to fill out the survey in order to help develop our community in the right way that will encompass each and every student in their need.
There has been an adjustment to the way that SGA is ingrained in our community. We found that there are more opportunities to connect with students virtually. Many of our classmates have irregular schedules, different clinical hours, different class schedules, as well as other contributing factors. So we think of connecting both in small yet safe groups in person, as well as the online type of gathering will really help include as many members of the community as possible.
One of the newest implementations to society is, of course, masks. Although it can be difficult at times to wear for extended periods, this barrier we will overcome. Perhaps the best perspective to have on the masks is it's just another way to express individuality. As we approach the start of the semester and our students spend countless hours searching for the perfect mask, it will remain abundantly important to remember Regis roars together.
Thank you all. Again, my name is Audrey Grace, and I'm your Associate Vice President for Inclusive Excellence and Chief Diversity Officer. And in that role, my primary concern is and has always been ensuring equity, inclusion, and belonging for everyone. And belonging requires that you all feel safe on campus, physically and psychically. For the physical aspect, we're making sure that everyone has the most up-to-date information, resources, and tools that they need to succeed. That's essential because our collective safety is essential as we move back to campus. So in addition to our website with the most up-to-date information, we are making sure that every community member, all students, all faculty, all staff will take an online webinar which goes through the best ways to protect yourself and others on campus. As part of that webinar, we're also asking everyone to sign off on our Pride Pledge. And this is an acknowledgement of our community expectations of care. The other thing is our brilliant health services team and Regis educated health services team will go through with everyone they test in detail all of the steps that one should take when they experience symptoms or test positive, and even before that. There's also additional mechanisms, of course, in place to ensure that our living and our working and our learning environments are safe and healthy. Our health and safety policies, our new ones, are now part of our student handbook and code of conduct. So in addition to requiring that everyone wear a face covering and before they enter a classroom, an office, or a shared space, and I'll leave it to Cole for what from what face covering that he comes up with that adds a new fashion trend to the Regis community. Can't wait to see that. But in addition to requiring those absent an accommodation, the student code and our employee policies will also allow us to respond to those who are not doing what they need to do to keep our community safe. Because we really are in this together, as many people have been saying. This is truly a wonderful community. Everyone knows each other. We're all connected to one another. And we understand that we all have the responsibility to take the necessary steps to stay healthy and safe so that others can do so as well. Particularly those who are physically unable to wear a mask or face covering, or those who are unable to socially distance from vulnerable loved ones. So as you've heard, Regis does roar together, as it has since its founding, I think nearly 100 years ago. And so together, we're working to ensure that COVID doesn't silence our roar. So with that, I would like to turn it over to our Vice President for Academic Affairs, my friend, Dr. Driscoll.
Hello, it's a pleasure to be here with you tonight. Audrey Grace and I came to Regis just about the same time, just as the pandemic was starting. And so for both of us, it's going to be our first fall at Regis. And I know that I can't wait to be on campus with you and experience Regis in its full fall glory. One of the things that we've been doing for 100 years is priding ourselves on the education that we provide to the students who attend Regis. And so we have spent a great deal of time trying to think about what we have learned from the experience we've had so far. Some of you were part of that. Some of you are coming to Regis for the first time as first-year students or transfers. And so I want to talk a little bit about how the experience at Regis, I think, is going to be even better than it was this spring. We have a lot of depth in online education, both in terms of resources and in expertise. And that served us very well. But we also had things that we had to learn. So in devising this plan, we really had, I like to say, two overarching goals. And those run through the academic plan as well. One is the health and safety of every individual. We will not bring people back to campus until we know it is safe and that we can help to keep them safe. But the other thing that we think is really important is creating a plan that maximizes the chances of every student's success in their chosen major. And so as a result of that, knowing that we may have to toggle during the semester between remote and in-person instruction, and I'll talk about that in a minute, we've taken a full semester and split it into 2 terms. So every full-time undergraduate student will register for a full slate of classes. But they'll find in the first weeks, they'll be taking probably about half of them. And in the second 8 weeks, they'll be taking the other half of them. We're starting earlier and we're starting remotely. So on August 17th, for sure, we will begin our remote instruction for that first term. We are certainly planning and in every intent to be on campus on September 8th and to start our in-person instruction as near there as possible. But we're also flexible because we know if things change, we have figured out ways to roll with those punches. So let me just say a little bit about what's happened. Those of you who are returning to Regis, you will find when you look at your current schedule that you did last spring, that now every course gives you a start and an end date, and those will correspond to terms A and B. The first one starts on August 17th and will conclude on October 11th. The second one starts on October 13th and will conclude December 6th. So that's a few weeks earlier, both that you're coming back to instruction and that you will be finishing the semester. Right now, it's our expectation that students will leave campus at Thanksgiving and probably finish the semester remotely. And as soon as we get this semester launched, in fact, even before that, we're already thinking about what intersession and spring session will look like. And again, that will wait on this, on what we learn and what the science is and what we know about where we are with these conditions. So you probably know that one of the conditions under which we're coming back to campus is that everyone needs to social distance. And that means that you're 6 feet away from another individual. All summer, we have been working with the staff on campus to look at our classrooms and reconfigure them so they are safe spaces, but for smaller numbers of people. So we're working over the course of the next month to determine which classes are really critical for students to have an in-person experience. As you know, some of our majors involve clinical work, health sciences, nursing, in-person laboratory and simulation experiences, and we want to make sure that we give students the richest possible chance to experience those. While the advisors and the faculty have been working all summer, and I thank them for it, to bring together all of the materials that we need to adjust the classes to the new format, the new 8-week format. We do know that we are in the process now of deciding which of those classes are actually going to be taught in person first. Some courses will continue to meet for less time over the 16 weeks. I know it sounds complicated, but you'll find probably by the middle of August that we can give you a detailed picture of at least what your first 8 weeks are going to look like. And we are, as I said, flexible. We will continue to toggle between the remote and the in-person as we need to and as conditions dictate. We are very committed to your continuity of education. And we also know that many of you really want to be on campus and have that in-person classroom experience. We want that too, and we want to make it possible for as much time and for as many people as all of the regulations will allow. So you may be saying, what if I have something that makes me think I won't be able to be in person all the time? You're a graduate student, maybe you have childcare issues because you don't know what's happening with the schools. Or maybe you're a commuter student that's living with an immunocompromised person and you're afraid to come in and out of our bubble even with all of the safety measures. We will work with you to make sure that you can continue your instruction as possible with whatever temporary social accommodations we need for this semester. We're working out that process too. There's lots of details that we've figured out, and we're going to use every second of the month before we're starting up again to figure out some of the rest of it. I want to tell you that we are very optimistic about students being able to be in labs and simulations and clinical experiences and even internships, although some of those things require that our partners permit students to be in those settings. But we've found out and we've learned from the spring, even when our students had to stop their clinical practicums, we've been able over the summer to get them back into those settings as those settings allowed and get them to finish those hours. We'll do the same thing this semester. We will figure it out. I think I'm going to put that on a t-shirt. We're going to figure it out. And let me say that we still have the same set of services that support you before, during, and after your studies. We have great advisors who have been working all summer. We have the library. We have all of the counseling services and the tutoring services, and yes, the career placement services that you're going to need when you graduate. And lastly, I want to say that I think we've been enormously fortunate to have such great students who speak up and tell us what's not working and tell us what we need to change. So we're going to figure this out. We've got a lot of it done. We're ready to roll and we're ready to roar. I look forward to seeing you on campus in our first fall together. Thanks. And now it's my pleasure to introduce, bring it back to Walt Harner, the Dean of Students, who I think is going to talk to us a little bit about some of your questions.
Absolutely. I've been furiously monitoring the chat, and I've never seen so many questions fly in. And we knew this was going to happen, right? This is like drinking from a fire hose in terms of the amount of information that's included in the plan, as well as the amount of information that was included in the presentation. So we thank you for your questions. We're going to do our best to get to them. And as a reminder, for those questions we can't get to, because the volume is to the point where we'll be here until midnight, unless no one wants to do that. We'll make sure that the questions that have come through, those themes and those specific questions, we'll put them on our Return to Regis website. So those key questions that are coming in are responded to in general. And as a reminder too, if the volume of this got to be too much, you can also, at your leisure, watch a recording of us going through this again, if that's something that you'd rather do rather than Netflix and chill. But let's start with the questions. I think first and foremost is this questions that have come in a number about commuters. So this is going to go to Dr. Kolomitz and Dr. Jones. So what about commuters? Are they part of this bubble? Are they going to be part of testing? Our commuter population is so important. They want to know what's up with the commuters here.
Yes, they are part of our bubble. Absolutely, they are. So you will be a part of the testing protocol, and any person who is coming regularly to our campus, faculty, staff, student, graduate students, undergraduate students, you're a part of the bubble. And so we will put you into the testing protocol, and you'll be tested once a week as a commuter.
Excellent. I'm going to start going through some of the questions we received from Student Government Association first, and then we'll jump into the many questions that came in via our chat function. So bear with me, I'm looking at two screens here. We're going to stick with Kara here, and this is a question about students who are unable to live on campus. And many of our students are scholarship recipients that rely on their residency in order to receive the academic or the merit award. Talk about sort of what that means. Are these scholarships dependent on the residential requirement? What's the difference between that and a residential grant? Walk us through that.
Sure, happy to. First and foremost, I'll say again, Regis College is committed to your degree attainment. And so, of course, during this pandemic time, if you have an academic or a merit scholarship that has a residential requirement, your scholarship will remain intact if you are not able to reside on campus because of pandemic situations. First, that is different than a residential grant. A residential grant is only applicable if you are in residency. And I'm happy to personally answer any of those individual questions that any of the students may have. I also just want to back up Dean Horner and just reiterate around our commuters and commuting. If you're commuting from a neighboring state that the governor has given an exemption to in terms of quarantining, then you are exempt. So if you're commuting from Providence, or if you're commuting from Nashua or Hartford, you are exempt from the quarantining at this point in time. And again, that may change, but at this point in time, those commuters are exempted from the quarantining.
Thank you, Dr. Coleman. This came from our Student Government Association. This is about sort of the dining. So this is for Michael O'Keefe, our Vice President of Auxiliary and Business Services, who works closely with Aramark, our dining services provider. How's the dining hall going to work? We heard a little bit about that, but how are you going to make sure that we are safe when eating on campus?
Okay, thanks, Walt. So our partner Aramark in dining services, they have instituted a rigorous standard for safety measures in the dining hall, and they're following CDC, state guidelines, and their own internal, really rigorous safety standards. And those standards for their staff range from daily employee screenings, similar to what Dr. Jones described for our students, mandatory hand washing throughout the shift while they're working, increased cleaning, disinfecting, and adherence to sanitation standards in the dining hall. And we realized that creating a a great, safe dining program will go an awfully long way to helping everyone feel safe and to be safe on campus. So Walt, if it was focused around what might it look like in the dining hall, there will be some physical changes to the dining hall space itself. As Dr. Kolomitz noted, we're separating some of the tables, removing some, limiting the number of seats that are in there, and we're creating alternate places for folks to eat. You will notice a difference. We plan on having one entrance to the dining hall and one exit, so we limit cross traffic. You'll see plexiglass in the dining hall like you will around the campus. You'll see signage and decals that are directing the way through the dining hall. And what will it be like? If I could describe the dining experience, it's going to be really good, but as has been said tonight a couple of times, it's going to be different. It may not look the same. There will be lots of grab and go options, as you were told. There will also be delicious hot meal offerings. And we're also going to continue providing gluten and allergy-free options because we know that we need to meet everybody's dietary needs. Health standards, as Dr. Kolomitz mentioned, require that the buffet concept of going up and serving yourself, at least for now, is not possible. So the dining services staff will be serving almost everything to you when you're in the dining hall. And I do have some good news about the face mask question. We want you wearing your face mask when you come in and as you navigate through the dining hall, but there's no need to wear that while you're eating. That's just not practical, right? So you get a little bit of a reprieve in the dining hall.
Thanks, Michael.
Okay.
Appreciate it. I'm going to move on to Mary. We've got a couple questions for Mary, and I'm going to flow through these. The first one is about this idea that residence hall is closing prior to or over Thanksgiving, and then before the end of or beginning of finals week. Mary, can you talk a little about sort of this idea of internships that maybe haven't ended by that time? How are students going to navigate sort of the completion of this semester, whether it be internships or classes, as they move off campus?
So certainly in terms of clinical placements, I know that our faculty are working very hard to make sure that students start those as soon as possible, and that you'll be working with your faculty members and your advisors to really plan those activities to see that you can get them in. In the event that you have to leave campus at any time before completing it, we're committed to seeing that you finish it, just as we've had the students who were in dental hygiene are going to be back in the clinic this month to be finishing the work that they needed to do in the spring. So one of the good things about the fact that we've had some experiences, we also know how to turn some experiences into virtual experiences and have students finish them that way. We were able to do that with some of the simulations and clinical work for the nurses. So we're planning around that, and we're going to ask people to work with their advisors and faculty members just to stay on top of that.
Thanks, Mary. These have come in. I'm going to throw this one at you because I think we know the answer, but it's something I think we need to clarify for students. We talked about the A term and the B term, but there's also 16-week courses, correctly, that go over both terms. Could you explain sort of how those are determined and what that might look like for a student that has a 16-week course?
Sure, and the way that we've worked them is the schedule works together, so you don't have to worry about conflicting courses. If you're registered for a schedule, it still works fine. The 16-week courses are often things with clinical experiences, and so not all of them. And it's about a third of the courses so that we can make sure that students maximize their opportunity to get the in-person hours and the virtual hours that they will need during that time. So we've got roughly a third in the first semester, a third in the second semester, and a second term, not semester, and a third that are running 16 weeks. And as I said, we're working all of them together. That will also help us with space because you will have fewer classes to deal with at a time, which we found last semester helped when you had to toggle between remote and in person. And also, you will be able to complete some of the work in the first part of the semester if we have to leave any sooner than we're planning, and so that we would not be in a position where we had 5 courses that you had to finish. So,
thanks, Mary. This next question is for Courtney Mulligan. Dr. Driscoll touched us on this a bit in terms of accommodation, but Courtney, talk to us a little bit about the accommodation process and the idea that if classes resume as planned on September 8th in person, what does it look like for the students who need to continue to attend classes but remotely, not in person?
Sure. So the accommodation process itself will remain very much the same. Students will go through the application process, provide the documentation that we require, meet one-on-one to do a collaborative plan. In terms of remote classes, that is a potential accommodation. So we will receive every request, we will work directly with the student, and based on their unique circumstance, we'll figure out a plan that makes sense.
Thank you, Courtney. This next one's actually for me, and I'll answer it. And this is about those who are living out of state. And we know the challenge, right? There's students that want to get here as soon as they can. They would like to be here right now. And we've said you can't move in. First-year students can't move in until the 28th and 29th of August. And our upper class students can't move in until over Labor Day weekend. So we've received a lot of questions about, hey, can I, Walt, I know you seem like a nice guy. Can you let us move in early? The answer is no. And the reason is health services in our testing center need to get up and running in order to prepare for those important sort of arrival tests. And if everyone arrives at one time, we won't be able to manage that volume of testing. So this is very intentional. The staggered opening allows health services to test the students upon arrival. So you're going to send requests to our wonderful folks in Res Life. You're going to send it to me. You're going to come on bended knee, and I'm going to say, unless you have an unbelievable extenuating circumstance, you're going to get a time window when you arrive, and that will be your move-in time window. Please work with us on that. We can't emphasize that enough. And thank you in advance. Next question is for Donna Glenn, and this is a big one. And this is goes along with that move-in piece in terms of nursing clinicals. When do in-person nursing clinicals begin versus virtual clinical? And can you talk to us about the start date and sort of how you're going to manage that, Dr. Glenn? Because I know it's a lot of work for the nursing program to do the placements and get this up and running.
So thank you, Walt. So we've been working all summer on the fall. Well, first of all, we've been working all summer on the summer students, some of our accelerated students. And I'm absolutely thrilled to say that all of our students right now were assigned a preceptorship. They're completing their hours. We have clinical groups right now at Boston Children's Hospital. We have them at Mass General. We have them at Brigham and Women's, and they are completing the summer schedule. We are focused now on fall. So we're working to obtain those preceptorships to get all of the clinical hours scheduled. The Boston hospitals and the hospitals in the greater Boston area are open to students. Some of our clinical groups may be a little smaller, but they're open to students. And because of the projected surge, we will be starting clinicals, hopefully, for our traditional undergrads the week of September 8th. And then clinicals will be completed towards the end of October, first week of November. For our accelerated students who don't live on campus, we're going to focus on getting them into clinical on August 31st to start their clinical. And preceptorships for our seniors will be off and running right away.
Excellent. Thank you, Dr. Glenn.
Can I add one more thing?
Sure, go for it.
I'm just working right now with the Lab and Simulation Center to come up with plans as to how we can have the Lab and Simulation Center up and running with respect to social distancing. We may be borrowing Upper Student Union and setting up some tables there to check off skills, but with Professor Cullen, we're working hard to come up with that schedule. So I am going to ask all of my nursing students, please be checking your Regis emails regularly. We're posting things every day regarding clinical requirements and the college requirements. So please check your emails. Thanks, Walt.
Awesome. Thank you. I'm going to jump to a question from a graduate student. And this is, I think, a couple questions that we've heard recently. And this is the movement of some graduate programs to completely remote, and these conversations around tuition adjustments in sort of as part of that. And I'll let Mary and Kara address this. This is something that's come up from a variety of different students.
So when we looked at the program this fall, and we knew that we weren't going to be on campus for 3 weeks of residence, that obviously is a change to the residence fee. But we are giving a full semester's worth of instruction, and it will have all of the services attached to it, in addition to classes in terms of clinical work, in terms of access to services in counseling and mental health and advising and all of that. So it will be a robust program. So we do not anticipate any change in the tuition levels supporting the program.
Thanks, Mary. This next one's for Dr. Jones and Dr. Kolowitz. It's some of the stuff we had talked about before, but a little more in depth. And this is the idea of the student experience, right? And traveling off campus and the idea of a campus bubble. Are there going to be restrictions on local travel, and are students allowed to leave campus? Can you break the bubble, or do you get in trouble? What happens?
Can you break the bubble? Well, what I said earlier about one of the largest learning outcomes for everyone during this fall semester is how to live in a pandemic and live in a healthy way. So we would say that just as you are doing in your own home now, we would ask you to do on campus. So if you are leaving campus and you are masked and you're going to the grocery store and you're socially distancing and you're using hand sanitizer, and you come back to campus and you wash your hands and you do everything you need to do, of course, that's very appropriate because that's how you're taking precautions. If you are leaving campus and going to a large gathering of 20,000 people, and we would say that isn't safe and that isn't appropriate. So we are a closed campus, but of course, people are able to come and go. We have people that are going to go to clinicals. We have people that may be going to their internships, but it's about the choices that you're making and the safety protocols you put in place outside of the campus, and then the ways in which you return to campus.
Excellent. Thanks, Kara. We talked a little about commuters, but one of the things that's come up is sort of commuters as part of that campus bubble. Will they be allowed to access campus spaces, go to the library, the learning commons, and things like that? Yeah.
Of course, and we want you to. Again, I would say it's all about the safety precautions that you take to make yourself safe and all of us safe. So we want to see you using the commons and the Dunkin' Donuts, and we want to see you in the quad, and we want to see you doing all that with your face mask, and we want to see you washing hands and using sanitizer. Our bubble, we are only as safe as we are with one another, and learning to live in this way is going to be really productive for you even in the future.
If you haven't figured out yet, we're in the midst of the questions coming in via chat, so I'm going to the Zoom chat, so I'm trying to do my best to manage through these. I've got one for Pam Roker, if Pam wants to hop on, our Dean of Athletics. And we heard about the uncertainty about the fall competition season. What would it look like if there are no athletic competitions in the fall when it comes to athletics? What might the fall season look like?
Hi, Walt. How are you doing? Hi, everybody. Figure out how to get my video started. So we want to provide engaging, meaningful opportunities with the coaches, whether it's skill instruction, team meetings, whether it's classroom, whiteboard instruction, film sessions. The competition is really up in the air right now. Everything comes down to the safety standpoint and that aspect, as we've talked about. Kara's mentioned it, Diana Jones mentioned it. That's first and foremost. So right now, if we proceed with the fall and it is a decision to not compete, it will be a full experience with a coach, with the coaching staff for as many days as we can fit in without competition. And then we will have to make a decision on spring competition a little bit later on. So this is, I believe right now we're talking about fall sports only. This is not involving the winter sports or spring sports at this time.
Excellent. Thank you, Pam. Great question. This is from a student, by the way, so students don't give me a hard time about this question. It says, with college students being among the least compliant with social distancing, proper face coverings, how are we going to manage to ensure that members of the community, not just students, are adhering to the guidelines that Dr. Jones and Dr. Kolowitz talked about? I'm going to hand this to Audrey. She talked a little bit about it, but I think there's some more questions around sort of what's that look like if someone's not being compliant and not sort of being part of this bubble in a responsible way.
Oh my goodness, your faith in college students. Okay. So there's a lot going on there, and so it depends on the location, of course. But because we have members of our community who are either immunocompromised or extra vulnerable, there will be policies in the public spaces, such as the dining halls or in classrooms, that will permit people to tell people they can't enter if they're not wearing the appropriate face coverings, or ask people to separate, they're not socially distancing in particular spaces. But again, as I mentioned, not only our student code of conduct, but our employment policies, there are ways in which we could take educational and corrective action for folks who are not wearing the proper face coverings or socially distancing. So part of that is explaining to people why this is necessary and why we need to do this as the community. And so there are tools to enforce that if someone decides not to wear a face covering when they come onto our campus.
Thanks, Audrey. Appreciate it. This is something that's I think important. I'm gonna probably hand this to Dr. Jones, even maybe President Hayes, and Dr. Tuthill as well. And this is about sort of what we've seen in dashboards around different states and with the DPH and the CDC. If we find that students test positive, faculty and staff, how is that going to be communicated to the Regis community? Is there going to be a website, or is there going to be a dashboard that exists so parents, families, students can be aware of sort of the status of the disease on campus?
Dr. Jones, I think
Yeah, so we will be keeping track of all cases at health services. And I think we really haven't made a concrete decision yet on how we're going to share that information. Is Kelly on the call?
I'm on the call, Diana, and I think really what we're trying to figure out, everyone, is what's most useful to the community. Right. We have a big online community, so for you to have a tally of somebody in another state might not be useful. So we're gonna try to be as transparent as possible. Certainly, if there's anything that's compromising the safety of our community, you will be amongst the first to know. We're going to get you that information. If necessary, if the worst case scenario happens, you'll get an alert. We'll use all systems. The app will alert you. Your phone will go off, your email. You know what it's like on a snow day. If there's something that requires your urgent attention, we will make sure we get your attention. If it's that you want a tally of the campus rate, we'll probably post that on the website. So it'll be varying levels of information depending on how urgent it is for the community to know.
Thanks, Kelly. This next question is, I think, more of a support question, and I can answer others as well too. Diana, you talked about for the students who are out of state, bringing a negative test with them prior to moving. How are we going to help students acquire those tests? What type of support can we provide students so they know how to access a test or get a test prior to arriving?
Right. So we're going to work with students and try to find them locations for free testing. A lot of the states now have free testing and are testing asymptomatic people. So we will work with students and we will reach out to students to help them with that. And we are still figuring out the process of submitting those test results. So whether that be sending them to Residence Life or Health Services. So to be announced or decided, you will definitely get information on that as we figure it out.
Thanks. There's a question here, and I can give this to Kara, about some of those campus traditions that we all know and love, the Regis Fest, the Convocation, things like that. What's it going to look like? Obviously, large-scale events might be different. What are those events like Regis Fest going to look like? Are we going to hold things like that, or what might that feel like on campus? I think Dr. Kolomitz froze on us, so I'll answer that one. I think obviously we're working with the CDC when it comes to size restrictions in terms of gatherings. I know Dan Leahy and the Center for Ministry and Service are coming up with contingency plans to offer, our traditional Mass of the Holy Spirit convocation in virtual or smaller group gatherings that address those things. I think more importantly, we're not going to abandon those campus traditions. We're going to work with the Student Government Association, with faculty and staff to figure out what those things are going to look like in the fall. And we're already in the process because we know convocation and the Mass of the Holy Spirit are fast approaching. Did I get everything there, Dr. Kolomitz?
did a great job, unless I'm still frozen.
Maybe someone could mention Founders Day.
I was going to say, we have a new plan for Founders Day this year that will focus on our community in a different way. So instead of leaving campus, there's a whole group that is working on this that has a really robust program. And you'll see in the academic calendar, it's one of the days that we don't have classes in that first term, just so that we can be together and celebrate the founding spirit of Regis.
Excellent, thank you. There's a question here about staff and employees in terms of, will they be on campus? Will they be remote? Sort of, how does that work? We've heard about students and repopulating the campus with students. What's it going to look like for faculty and staff when it comes to testing, when it comes to their presence on campus? Who's going to be here? Who's not going to be here?
Let me just say a word about faculty, and then maybe Kara can say something more about the staff. So the faculty are essentially going through the same process that I talked about in terms of accommodation. Some of them have special medical circumstances and they will be teaching remotely, or other conditions that temporarily may mean that they're not on campus. We're compiling that list. We're trying to be as generous as we can in this pandemic situation that requires us to be flexible. And we're going to know, that's part of the reason that we'll know which courses will be fully remote, and we'll be able to tell you that at least for the first and second term. The faculty want to be here. They are working all summer to make their courses vivid and exciting for you. And I think they feel that they have learned a lot about having to do this quickly and really do everything at once. And so I think you're going to find that it's an experienced faculty that's here and present for you, even if they are on a Zoom screen.
Thanks, Mary. Anything to add to that?
Well, I would just say that we have staff that are what we call student facing, and staff members whose work is directly related to students and their day-to-day experience and their residential experience. And they're planning to be there with you. And you, Dr. Jones and her staff, they're all fitted for their N95 masks. And we're committed to having all of those services available for all our students. We also, though, are Regis College, and we're in the middle of a pandemic, and we want to serve our faculty and staff well. So if there is a faculty or a staff member that is immune compromised or has a situation at home that they're not able to be on campus, we are going to accommodate that. So there might be a few faces that you might have to see on Zoom, but the intent, of course, is that you have that personal relationship and connection with all the people that you treasure and love at Regis.
This next question is about those personal relationships, and it comes focused on residence life, and I can answer this if Kelly Brochu wants to jump in too. And this is the idea of the visitor policy. Obviously, we've talked about that there'll be no outside visitors that are able to enter the residence hall, but their question is, does that pertain to those inside the bubble? So for residential students that are going through the rigorous testing, those students will be able to visit other residence halls for a certain period of time. I think the most important thing to take is there's a lot of residential life policies that are, we talked about drinking from a fire hose, it's a lot of information, and we don't want to share that with commuter students and others that it doesn't pertain to. So residential students, you're going to get some very specific guidance over the course of the next few weeks about the guest policy, about what it looks like, you know, in terms of use of the restrooms, what it looks like in terms of guests or using other common spaces. So residential students, just hold on a moment and you're going to get a lot of detail from Bridget, from Jim, and from Kelly and Stanley before you move in, so you're prepared for the residential experience.
And one of the things I want to just remind you, just since we're talking about residents, one of the things we learned is it's hard to move out of a residence hall if you're supposed to be in class at the same time. It's also hard to move in. So those of you that end up with Friday afternoon appointments to move into the hall and you may have a class, we'll work with the faculty to see that you can do what you need to do and move in at the time that you're assigned.
Great. Thanks, Mary. This is a tricky question, so I'm going to give it to Dr. Kolomitz. Why not, right? And this is around sort of this idea of there may be students who need to move on and off campus or move remote versus in person for a variety of reasons. It could be health related. They could, you know, come in contact and have to go home and quarantine.
Of course.
And this is for Mary too. So how do we manage that for students? They may be on campus and then need to be quarantined at home for 14 days. And and they'd like to be in person. How does that work? I guess sort of the mechanics, but then Mary can talk about the academics too.
Yeah.
Sure. Well, the word that Dr. Driscoll and I've been using frequently is toggle. That is a reality, that there are students that most likely will need to toggle back and forth between the in-person classes and the remote classes. And that's why I'll let Dr. Driscoll talk about that. But we are committed to you being fully capable to do that if your academic program is able to support that. In terms of residency, again, we want this to work for you. You aren't going to be penalized if something because of the pandemic occurs and you have to leave campus. Does that answer is that where we were going?
Yes.
Well, and I think in terms of the academic continuity, one of the things that the faculty understand, and they are fabulous, brilliant faculty, is that we've guaranteed continuity of instruction to every student wherever possible. And that, as some of you know who were on campus last semester, that sometimes meant that you would have to finish an experience that couldn't be done remotely at another time. I'm thinking of those of you that were in the dental hygiene clinic. There's really no way to provide that experience remotely. But for those of you who are in a class that you have to switch for whatever reason, or we have to switch, the faculty know that at any point that may happen either for the entire class or for individual students. And that's why we're trying to plan so carefully, and also why we're trying to plan fewer classes at a time, because it's easier to do those kinds of arrangements when you're not dealing across 5 or 6 classes.
And I'm just going to jump in too, and I just want you to know that that's why the faculty are working so much this summer to make sure that their courses can be both in person and be remote. And remembering as well that most of the remote classes will actually be synchronous, not asynchronous, meaning that will be offered the same time that it would be if it was an in-person class, and you'll be in a classroom, although it might be a Zoom classroom, you'll all be together. So that's different than strictly online, which would be asynchronous. This will be predominantly synchronous when you're going remote. And the students that may have to leave campus will be able to, the plan is that they will be able to Zoom in to a classroom that might be actually being in the classroom.
Thanks, Dr. Hayes. This next question, we're going to stick with Mary. And this is I think the schedule question is, and I think you addressed it a bit, but I think they want some more clarification. When will students find out which courses will be remote, hybrid, or in person in terms of their schedule for the fall?
Great question. And we need a couple of weeks to figure that out. As Professor Glynn said, we're looking at spaces that we don't normally use and thinking about where we're going to hold classes in some of those spaces and how we're going to prepare. So the bottom line is we're really hopeful by the middle of August, students will have that information. And remember, the earliest classes would start in person is September 8th. Like the housing, we may have to stagger those classes in. We have to figure out the movement patterns in and out of classrooms on campus as well. But we hope to have that information to you for the first term anyway, as soon as possible. And then we'll be able to figure out what the second term looks like as the situation stabilizes or changes, and we know what we're going to be dealing with in terms of a surge or not. And so we're hopeful. So, but if you want to see your schedule and you've registered or you're working with an advisor, you can see when the classes are meeting in terms of which term. And it tells you if most of the classes, as the president indicated, have a time listed next to them. They just don't have a room.
Thanks, Mary. Just to give you the volume here, and knowing that we're not going to continue this forever because we've all probably getting a little hungry here for those of us that haven't eaten dinner yet. There are still 35 questions that haven't been answered, so we're not going to go through all those. That would be too painful. So I'm going to sort of identify 2 or 3 that have maybe new things that we haven't addressed yet that I'll bring to the group, so folks are getting those answers. And then as a reminder, the Return to Regis website, which Dr. Tot-Hill and her team are putting on, we're going to load as many of these questions on there so you get these responses. And then again, if there's something you ask and you're like, why the heck didn't they respond to my question? It's not because we don't love you, it's because there's 35 questions that are still sitting there. We can send those, you can send any question you want to COVID-19, all one word, at regiscollege.edu, and we'll respond to that as we get information in terms of the information you're looking for. So a few final questions. One's for Dr. Jones. There's questions about the test. Are these tests rapid? You talked about the 15-second swab. Is it a 15-second return, or how long does a student have to wait?
Yeah, so it's a PCR, it's a molecular test. It needs to be sent out to the lab, and the turnaround time is 24 hours. So it's within 24 hours. So it's not a rapid test. It would be wonderful if we could get rapid tests. I'm hopeful, but right now it's this test that we send out. We do the swab, we send it out, it goes to the lab, and then they contact us with the test results.
Thank you, Dr. Jones. I'm going to call this the last question because it's the biggest question of all. Then I'm going to give it to Kara Kolomitz, but I think it's important for us to just hear that we're thinking about it. We're all this planning for the fall semester. What about the spring semester? What's the plan? When will we know? What's that look like? Dr. Hayes, too. That's the next big question. We're not there yet, but people are asking already.
Thanks. I'm happy to start, Kara. We can jump in together. The truth of the matter is that we're taking this one day at a time. There is so much that's out of our control, and there's so much uncertainty. So we are taking it one day at a time and one semester at a time, with the hope that as things get better in terms of the virus, the school can open further and the classrooms and all will be more open to us. But at this time, we're working within the guidelines of the Public Health Department and the CDC, and when they make changes, then we can make those changes.
And let me just say, I'm going to jump in. We started this planning really in April, May, June, July. Look where we are. We've got a lot of time before the spring semester, and we'll start that planning right away so that we probably will be able to tell you whatever it is that we know well into the year.
Mm-hmm. Our biggest commitment is academic continuity and making sure that you complete your degree requirements throughout the year. And we have developed protocols and plans and ways, both academically and socially and community-wide, to assure that kind of continuity, because that's what you're here for. You're here for that academic achievement, and that's what we're committed to, is making sure that you achieve your academic goals.
I was going to ask Dr. Hayes if she had any closing thoughts or parting comments. So the floor is yours as we end. And for those that aren't aware, administrators, please stay on the line. We want to make sure all the questions, the 37 questions now, the remaining, we capture those and make sure they go the right way. So students, families, you can hop off when Dr. Hayes is done, but I'd ask some of the administrators to stay so we can make sure we can capture these questions. Okay. Thank you again.
Thank you all for being with us. And thank you, team, for a wonderful presentation. As you can see, we need your partnership. We need you to work with us as we move forward and navigate these uncharted waters. We can do it. Regis has a history of great challenges, as the founders of our wonderful university have taught us. And the most important thing is that we are a family, we are a community, and we can do this together. And I really do look forward to seeing you in September.